Gianna, and good morning, participants. Yesterday, the CTU hosted the 18th CIGF and the first Caribbean Youth IGF. It was chock full of informative ideas, interesting presentations, and an alphabet soup of acronyms. We had representatives from UN IGF, ICANN, LACNIC, ARIN, and ISOC, all bringing greetings on behalf of their respective organizations and briefly addressing current internet governance issues relevant to the Caribbean. We also heard from the national IGFs in Trinidad and Tobago, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Haiti, and LAC-TLD. They briefed us on ongoing work in their respective territories. UN IGF representative Anya Genko spoke to us about the value of inclusion and cooperation among national, sub-regional, regional, and youth IGF initiatives, and specifically about engaging youth and parliamentarians on digital policies to shape democracy. Albert Daniels of ICANN reiterated that the voices of even the smallest stakeholders should be considered in these global discussions. ARIN Director of Caribbean Affairs, Bevil Wooding, noted how much more ingrained technology has become in everyday life and discussed the impact of the pandemic as a catalyst for the digitization of daily life. Miguel Ignacio Estrada of LACNIC shared with us the methodology and findings of the LACNIC-APNIC report on technical success factors of the Internet, noting that as the Internet evolves, it is important to recognize and preserve the guiding ideals and design principles that contributed to the scalability, flexibility, adaptability, and resilience. The general themes of all the presentations emphasize the importance of the inclusion and participation of all stakeholders, particularly the youth population, as well as the significance of proper representation and consultations for holistic and comprehensive policy and internet governance solutions. The Caribbean Youth IGF further stressed the need for youth involvement in decision-making and solution formulation. Youth account for the largest percentage of internet users, and in the Caribbean alone, youth account for 23% of the region's population. We also discussed the importance of internet resilience in the Caribbean, which can be impacted by the region's vulnerability to climate change and natural disasters. Lester Garcia of Meta took us through the evolution of the internet from dial-up to broadband and Meta's goals to facilitate the new internet, the next generation of the internet with a new world of enhanced opportunities. The metaverse is intended to be the new generation of the internet as a place for developers and creators to offer new experiences to audiences in a more immersive and interconnected environment. Xavier Jean-Claire from Barbados shared with us his insights on the creative economy, also called the orange economy, and on intellectual property matters. He demonstrated to the audience how a concept can be turned into digital art. We also dived into careers in internet governance and possible career paths for youth. ICT professionals from across the Caribbean shared their experiences and advice for youth as a possible roadmap for careers in internet governance. They emphasized the importance of being adaptable, flexible, and willing to embrace change and pivot as technology continuously evolves. It was indeed an impactful and interesting Caribbean IGF, and a very successful first Caribbean Youth IGF. As we proceed today into the inaugural SIDS IGF, we look forward to another productive and successful day. Have a wonderful day. Back over to you, DJ Anna.
Thank you so much, Naya. We'd actually like to invite the Honorable Minister Davidson Ishmael, Minister of Innovation, Science and Technology, Barbados, to deliver the opening remarks.
Thank you very much, DJ. Distinguished participants to the inaugural Small Island Developing States Internet Governance Forum, I consider it a distinct honor to have been invited to deliver these remarks at the inaugural Small Island Developing States SIDS Internet Governance Forums, IGF. I wish to express my sincere appreciation on behalf of the Government of Barbados to the organizers of the event and our strategic partners, the Caribbean Telecommunications Union, CTU, and the Caribbean Community, CARICOM, Secretariat, who have worked collaboratively to coordinate this course. Each of you can be proud of your work in advancing policy discussions and providing guidance with respect to regional priorities for ICT-driven development. I also wish to extend a hearty welcome to the numerous online participants from the islands of the Caribbean, the Pacific, and all others from around the world. The ministry that I have the honor and privilege to lead, the Ministry of Industry, Innovation, Science, and Technology, MIST, was established, among other things, to create an environment that harnesses innovation and information and communication technologies, to generate employment, increase national wealth, and improve the quality of life for all Barbadians. Therefore, my ministry's responsibility and purpose is to bring Barbados fully into the digital era through the increased use of digital channels, especially as it relates to access to public services. As minister, I am therefore charged with the responsibility of driving public sector performance through intelligent use of innovation, science, and technology. Accordingly, my government recognized that to meet this objective, it required a level of reform that would create a paradigm shift from our established patterns to bring Barbados fully into the digital era through the increased use of digital channels. My government therefore pivoted to be able to provide a catalytic and synergistic drive towards the strategic, effective, and efficient adaptation and deployment of technological solutions such as the internet, aimed at digitally transforming our public sector. This year's theme, Internet Governance Priorities for ICT-Driven Development, is therefore of relevance to the mandate of my ministry. The internet as a global resource impacts everyone. As such, the rules, policies, standards, and practices that govern its continued operation and evolution should be shaped by a global community. This includes governments, the private sector, civil society, and the technical community. Indeed, this is the ethos of the Small Island Developing States Internet Governance Forums, as it provides an opportunity for small island developing states to coordinate a regional approach to internet governance. Focus forums such as this one provide an opportunity to discuss common issues, consolidate our positions where we can reach consensus, and leverage the strength of our numbers to impact global policy development. Ladies and gentlemen, our voices must be heard, and they must be heard clearly and consistently. I trust, therefore, that coming out of this forum, there will be recommendations for issues that can be advanced within the global internet governance policy development space. Colleagues, who is better placed to speak on behalf of small islands, but small islands themselves? We understand our unique social, economic, and environmental vulnerabilities, chief among them, the global climate crisis that is wreaking havoc to some of the most vulnerable populations around the world. The Prime Minister of Barbados and my leader, the Honorable Mia Amor-Motley, has been a strong global advocate on this issue, emphasizing the need for international financial systems to deliver for those on the front line of the crisis and for leaders of the world's largest economies to try harder and to honor their commitments to avert a global disaster. Historically, Barbados has long been a champion of small island developing states, having hosted in April 1994 a global conference on the sustainable development of small island developing states. The legacy of this global conference is encapsulated in the 14 priority areas, which were elaborated into a program of action, which is now referred to as the Barbados Program of Action. The Barbados Program of Action became the first ever intergovernmental policy document to integrate the small islands into the world economy and tackle their socio-economic development problems. These priority areas included not just climate change and sea level rise, but also transport, communication, and science and technology. Equally important is the International Telecommunications Union, the ITU, which has supported the hosting of this IGF. The ITU has also made strategic interventions aimed at speeding up the deployment of information and communication technologies to small islands and to helping these countries to put in place appropriate strategies and policies aimed at attracting investment into the ICT sector. As we are aware, investment in this sector is crucial to ensuring that our regions are not disadvantaged in an era that is becoming more and more dependent on technological innovation to drive delivery of public services and to make businesses more globally competitive. The Caribbean Internet Governance Forum, CIGF, which concluded yesterday, is one of the longest running internet governance forums globally, having reached its 18th year this year. A key achievement of this forum is the Caribbean Internet Governance Policy Framework, which has been a useful point of reference to guide national priorities for the Caribbean in this multifaceted and complex area. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish to highlight a few of the critical areas in this regard, starting with the provision of adequate and affordable local broadband access capacity for all. Universal access is a cornerstone of our future social and economic development. We must do all in our power to ensure that no one is excluded, because exclusion doesn't just mean no internet access. It means the exclusion from economic opportunities, from education and access to information, exclusion from public and social services that are becoming more and more digitalized. The lockdowns and social distancing measures of the COVID-19 crisis has reinforced the importance of communication infrastructures and services, as well as access to robust governance of data. Addressing these divides in access to broadband and underserved socioeconomic groups, upgrading networks to the next evolution of fixed and wireless broadband, and enhancing access to and the sharing of data can help spur economic and social benefits. In Barbados, we are committed to ensuring that everyone has access through the funding of programs through the Universal Service Fund. Hand in hand with connectivity, access to affordable devices is critical. During the global pandemic, my government worked with private sector organizations to provide access to devices, in particular to school children, to ensure that they could continue learning as schools were closed to physical attendance. Although there were still major challenges in this regard, we have learned from the experience and are even more resolved in our efforts at making devices more affordable. With respect to internet technical infrastructure and operations management, another regional priority, we have seen significant growth in deployment of internet exchange points in the Caribbean. ISPs, internet exchange points, are important in ensuring the reliability and capacity of the internet. We want an even greater proliferation of ISPs and the development of other internet services around them. I endorse the recommendation of the CTU that there be a minimum of 1 internet exchange point per country with local DNS root server and IPv6 routing capability, a regulatory policy for local traffic to be switched locally, and for reporting of traffic statistics by ISPs. Again, this will play a significant part in improving the efficiency of local traffic. I will support the development of local content. Cybersecurity also remains an issue of concern and a priority area for the Caribbean. We must ensure coordinated and sustained national and regional approaches to cybersecurity and related threats. The CTU has worked with the CARICOM Implementation Agency for Crime and Security, CARICOM Impacts, on the development of a CARICOM Cybersecurity and Cybercrime Action Plan with the support of the Commonwealth Secretariat and the Organization of American States. However, more resources are needed to support proper implementation. This action plan identifies 5 priority areas of intervention for addressing cybersecurity and cybercrime issues in the CARICOM region. These issues are 1, public awareness, 2, building sustainable capacity, 3, technical standards and infrastructure, 4, legal environment, and 5, regional and international cooperation and collaboration. Of equal importance is the need for harmonization of legal frameworks and enforcement mechanisms at the regional level to support and facilitate certainty and predictability in the legal and regulatory environment. This falls squarely within the policy decision of CARICOM heads of government to establish a single ICT space within the region, underpinned with strong legislation and policies. Content creation also remains a priority. It is imperative that we create the enabling environment, such as the appropriate infrastructure and institutional support for the recognition and protection of Caribbean electronic content. Our creatives in the region are arguably second to none. I could go back to the 1970s with Jackie Opel from Barbados, Bob Marley from Jamaica, the Mighty Sparrow from Grenada and Trinidad, and Tobago, and many more. The internet provides a platform for monetizing creative content and providing opportunities for new and upcoming artists and social media influencers. We need to ensure that the Caribbean takes pride of place in this area. Other areas of priority include the promotion of awareness building and capacity building programs and events including the IGFs, such as those taking place this week, the Caribbean ICT Roadshow, ARIN on the Road, CaribNog, the Caribbean Internet Peering Forum, and others. We should see over the next few months how we can work on these with our stakeholders from SIDS, notwithstanding the challenges that may arise due to differences in time zones and language. Lastly, Research is needed to ensure that we are adequately measuring the success of our policies, what impact they are having on our societies, and what further interventions may be needed. I am pleased to see the establishment of the Research and Analysis Unit within the CTU with a focus on the implementation of a regional ICT monitoring and evaluation framework to support ICT indicators in the region. I implore all member states of the CTU to support this effort so that we have access to reliable data and are able to benchmark against global best practice. Colleagues, I want to thank you for the invitation to attend this session and to highlight some of the internet governance priorities for ICT-driven development. There's a lot more that can be said, but this is not a one-off conversation that we plan to have. We will continue to work through the CTU and through the Council on Trade and Economic Development, quoted ICT, with the support of the CARICOM Lead on Science and Technology, Grenada. I believe that we can forge this partnership even further by building a stronger coalition with other small island states relative to internet governance issues. This will support our efforts overall and allow us to share what scarce human and financial resources are available to us. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your attention and I wish you a very fruitful deliberation this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you so much to the Honorable Minister Davidson Ishmael for delivering that insightful message. Ladies and gents, the first SIDS Internet Governance Forum kicks off with a panel discussion on some key internet governance issues, including cybersecurity, data protection, cybercrime, and digital justice. Moderating this panel is Cherie Lagakali of Fiji, with the panelists including Ms. Georgina Kiele, Executive Manager and Cybersecurity and Government Digital Standards at Papua New Guinea Department of Information and Communications Technology, Papua New Guinea. Mr. Domingo Kabunare, Information Communication Technology Division, Ministry of Information, Communication, Transport and Tourism Development, Kiribati. Mr. Peter Rigamoto, Head of Legal, Digicel Pacific, Fiji. And just a reminder for our viewers, the bios for all presenters are available on the Hubilo platform. Let's welcome Ms. Cherie Lagakali.
Thank you very much, DJ Anna. Bula Vinaka and Maloelele. I say Bula Vinaka because, as DJ Anna has mentioned, I'm from Fiji, and I say Maloelele because I am this week in Tonga visiting the Tonga cyber community. And welcome to our first Small Island Developing State session. Yes, as DJ Anna has mentioned, we are having a discussion around cybersecurity, data protection, cybercrime, and digital justice. Somebody once explained to me earlier that we cannot have a cybercrime if we don't have the legislation. And the legislation is guided by the strategies and the policies. And then now, in the middle of when we're trying to put together strategies and policies and legislations, we have to think about data protection, we have to think about identity theft, we have to think about privacy online, and then comes phishing. And with phishing, it has advanced to such a level that, we're now getting spam emails or links that you should be clicked on coming to us in the local language. Cybersecurity exploded, I'd say, and I say the word exploded because 10 years ago, it was very rarely heard of. It exploded into the scene in the last 3 to 5 years, and mostly because technology has advanced so fast. And with advancing technology, internet is now accessible, especially now in the small islands, in the Pacific Islands. 22 years ago, the first submarine cable came into the Pacific. It arrived in Fiji. Now, most, if not all Pacific Islanders, we have our own direct cable connection, or we're connecting to some kind of a cable. And even this morning, I heard that we're in Fiji, we're considering a feasibility study on a second cable. So there's going to be so much internet. Do we have the right policies? Do we have the right strategies? Do we have the right legislation in place? And do we know where to go to if we need this kind of help? Speaking to us today, we have our first speaker, Georgina Kiele. Georgina, I noticed that you are executive manager, as DJ Anna has said. Congratulations on your recent promotion. You and I have not caught up since this promotion, and we heard that you are doing some really amazing things in Papua New Guinea, and we want to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Cherie. I'll share my screen. Okay, just Papua New Guinea government cybersecurity information update. I would like to start with the legislation and policy. We have two. I'm not sure if you're able to see my presentation.
We can see the
Cherie?
folder. We can see the
Oh,
folder,
all right.
Gina.
Just one moment. Sorry.
We can see it now. Thank you, Gina. Go ahead.
All right. Okay, so I would like to start with the policy and legislation. So we have two, a cybersecurity policy 2021 that was approved last year through the cabinet. And this policy, we started writing it in 2018. And when one of our critical infrastructure got hacked, that was the push for this policy to be approved by the cabinet. And recently we have the Digital Government Act 2022. For this policy, we started in 2 years ago also. It took us a while. Our lawyer that wrote this policy, he had to learn a lot of technical stuff to be able to put this this act together. And then we are still in draft with the cybersecurity strategy and the government cybersecurity standards. From before writing the standards, we were able to do the government departments audit, cybersecurity audits, where we were able to collect that data, and from this data, we are shaping our standards from this data. So on the queue for drafting is the Cybersecurity Act. The Act is taking cue from the National Cybersecurity Policy 2021. There are two acts that will taking the cue from this policy. That's the Cybersecurity Act and also the Critical Infrastructure Act. The NCSC and the N3C. NCSC is the National Cybersecurity Center. It's both in the policy and the Digital Government Act. The two components of the National Cybersecurity Center is the CERT, which is responsible for incident response and site investigation. And we have the CSOC. CSOC is to do with the cyber defense and monitoring. And then we also have the National Cyber Coordinating Center, also in the National Cybersecurity Policy. So the CERT currently, it's sitting in a different government agency, National Information and Communication Technology Authority. That agency and the Department of ICT, we report to the same minister. From the policy that we do plan to have the CERT to sit together with CSOC in the National Cybersecurity Center. The CSOC started in 2018 when we had the APEC, the Australian government and the PNG government signed a MOU which established the National Cybersecurity Center. So we were able to continue from 2018 till now, and the different services that the CSOC has right now: network protection, endpoint protection, cybersecurity training for all government department ICT offices, cybersecurity consultations, incident handling practices, the TTX, and also the CM and the MTR for monitoring. This is the Cyber Coordinating Center diagram. So with the Cyber Coordinating Center, it not only deals with cybersecurity. So with the cybersecurity incident response is handled by the CERT, but the Coordinating Center also deals with other cyber issues. So we also have the other capability, the social media management desk. It deals with misinformation and disinformation on social media. And with the we also learned during COVID, during the lockdown, we had a joint task force which was made up of different like the health department, the police. We were all sitting in one area, and we were able to share information. And so we learned from that, and we put it into the cyber concept. So we have the coordinating center. So agencies like the Cybercrime unit, the justice. So it mainly deals with prosecution. So from the beginning, like for example, if there is a fake information to do with the Prime Minister on social media, so it picks up, social media desk picks up that information, and also the coordinating center is also able to coordinate with the cybercrime unit to help find who the person is, and prosecution process could start from there. And also the use of technology would be in the CSOC. And the technology such as lawful intercept could be also be monitoring in the CSOC. So we all use only the technology monitoring with the CSOC. So the different cyber-related issues that we plan to coordinate within the entry C, also the cybercrime, cyber diplomacy, or anti-money laundering, human trafficking, drug trafficking, all these issues we are hoping to coordinate well within the coordinating center. This is my last slide. It's on awareness. So we have been involved in doing a lot of awareness, not only on cybersecurity, but also on cyber safety, online safety for children. We also we use platforms such as social media, the newspaper. We do go on radio and speak on radio, just do awareness on cybersecurity awareness. We we get involved with expos, talk to school children or with the youths, awareness on their online safety. And then we have trainings. The biggest so far is the one with the MOU with the Australian government. With this training is all for ICT officers within government. And we do plan to have more broader training touching the universities and other educational institutions as well. If we could also standardize or on this curriculums, and also ITU trainings such as Wellsman King for the staff, and the APNIC trainings, and there's other trainings that are coming to us as well. US Embassy also provides some form of trainings to us. This is our digital government plan for 2023 to 2027. As you can see, for 2023, we have the National Cybersecurity Center fully operational. And in 2027, the cyber resilience matures. Thank you. That would be the end of my presentation.
Well, thank you, Georgina. Looks like there's a lot of things that are happening in PNG. Great work by the Department of ICT. I would like to leave the questions till we hear from the other speakers. And so before we hear from Domingo, I think that we should commend our ISPs, internet service providers, our mobile operators, even our local teams on the ground. While travel would have shut down in the last 2 years because of COVID, development was still taking place locally with our Pacific Island countries building capacities within in-country as and internet survived the pandemic. Can you imagine a world on lockdown with no internet? Would have been crazy, right? Domingo, I hear that there's been a lot of things happening, a lot of internal development within country, exciting time for Kiribati. We'd like to hear from you.
Yeah, thank you, Cherie, for the time. And actually, I want to greet everyone. Well, from our side, it's good morning because it's really early in the morning. It's now almost 2 a.m. On the Friday from our part of the world. So to our colleagues from within the Caribbean, good afternoon, and good evening from whenever part of the world you are joining us for this session. As a way of introduction, my name is Domingo Kabunare. I work as a senior information security analyst for the government of Kiribati. My roles and responsibility revolves around cybersecurity mostly, but although we also have a lot of engagement in ICT development and within the country. So as we may have know, the global COVID-19 pandemic wreaked havoc to the global community since 2019, and Kiribati closed its borders at the end of 2019. So it was a bit early for Kiribati when they closed their border, and we remained COVID-free until May 2021. So within this time frame, from 2019 to 2021, and since then 2022 and further on, when our borders were closed to the global community, as was with for most countries across the world, due to COVID-19 pandemic. At those times, we are very isolated from most of the world, but thanks to technology, we were able to overcome our isolation, and we were able to continue to collaborate and communicate with our partners and to the rest of the international community with telecommunication. As the Honorable Minister during his opening remarks mentioned that the COVID-19 has been a catalyst for most of the digitalization process for most countries. This was also quite the same case for Kiribati. So the government of Kiribati recognized that technology is a key enabler that will allow the nation to thrive and progress and to develop in the coming years. And as we may all have known, Kiribati, my country, consists of tiny, low-lying islands scattered across the vast ocean. And telecommunication has been the backbone linking all our islands together, connecting our people together despite the distance between each of our islands. And as a way of update, the government is continuing to roll out mobile internet network on all islands across the Kiribati. And since the inception of this government project back into 2014, there are now at this moment in 2022, there are now only 2 islands out of the 22 inhabited islands without mobile network. But the government and as a leading agency, we are planning to roll out mobile networks on these islands towards the beginning of next year. So over the years, internet penetration have increased, and more and more of our people are connected to the internet. So this development presented a lot of opportunities for our local communities and our local population. For instance, connecting small local businesses from islands, outer islands, and rural communities on different islands to customers or consumers on urban areas, boosting commercial activities across the country. We also seen access to health was also improved with the introduction of a digital patient system where all health facilities across the country can access a centralized health information system for patient management and referral to our 3 main hospitals, which are mostly located on the bigger islands. And then online education platform was also widely used during the onset of the pandemic when the nation was under lockdown. So since May 2021 until recently, we recently opened our border. The education were mostly delivered via the internet. And so these are some of the advances that have been a great contribution to our social and economic development as a country. But with all these great advances and great opportunities, we have also observed an increase in cases where citizens were targeted with phishing and scam attacks, where Cherie shared at the beginning of this session. And this phishing and scam attacks have also trying to have changed over the years, involving local languages, where a lot of our local population were also being victimized, and also victims where they had financial loss. And there are also cases where minor children were lured into inappropriate communication with adults, There are also several parent and guardians reporting children accessing inappropriate content online. And then we at the ministry, at the agency that leading cybersecurity development, there was also a number of unauthorized access reported to online account and many other activities that that were also, despite a lot of these great advantages, there are also some of the issues that we are starting to see as more and more of our people have access to the internet. So this have led the government, our government, the government of Kiribati, to embark on introducing appropriate measures and putting mechanisms to better protect citizens, and more importantly, children. So noting a large proportion of our population have access to the internet, the government introduced a national cybersecurity strategy during between 2019 and 2022. So the government introduced the national cybersecurity strategy in 2020, but prior to that, the national ICT policy was introduced at 2019. So we have a bit of time to review and revalidate some of the ICT development and priorities that needs to be reviewed. And so with the onset of the pandemic, we have also shifted some of the priorities towards certain areas where there is greater needs to boost development, especially health facilities within on different islands to have access to internet connectivity, so that they can better have access to information, updated information regarding the COVID pandemic that is affecting the country at that time. And so in 2021, the cybersecurity strategy was passed in 2020 with provisions covering plans for critical national infrastructure protection, child online protection, establishing a computer emergency response team, and establishing a cybercrime legislation. So these are some of the goals of this strategy. And in 2021, fortunately, and I said it was quite fortunate that there was this, our borders were closed. The government was quite so focused on establishing a cybercrime act, in a sense that we are seeing a lot of our people connected to the internet to communicate to partners and business partners outside of Kiribati when the COVID, when our borders were locked to the global community. So with this, there was a fast track in 2021. Our Cybercrime Act came into force. It was passed in Parliament in 2021. And our Cybercrime Act was modeled after the Budapest Convention on cybercrime. And we are now currently working toward acceding to the convention. And we hope that this will happen within the next year from now also. And our computer emergency response team, so at the publication of our strategy, we are also trying to fast track some of the implementation of the goals that were outlined within the strategy. So in 2022, at the end of 2021, the computer response team, or the CERT, was established with a structure in place. Although not fully functioning with anticipated service at the moment, we now have a sustainable structure, which is one crucial achievement we have made thus far since the strategy call for the establishment of the CERT in 2020. And then going back to our national cybersecurity strategy, we are also working with our telecommunication regulator and our internet service providers, our ISP, to provide child-friendly SIM cards and Wi-Fi access code that will better allow children to access child-friendly site only and educational sites on the internet. This was done in order to foster digital citizenship by children and our young population. And this was also part of one of the goals of our national cybersecurity strategy. We, like most of our other Pacific colleagues, we have also been conducting mass community and school online safety awareness to better equip our citizens with the skills and knowledge to navigate the internet safely. But all of these efforts to try and put in place controls and mechanisms to better protect our people cannot be realized without data. So at the initiation of most of these efforts and activities, we also try to get our baseline data as we progress forward. So in a sense, we are able to determine how effective these controls and mechanisms we put in place as we progress on. So I cannot say that all of our efforts are 100% effective, but we hope that we are progressing into the coming years, and we will see these data and matrix from our baseline, and if these efforts are worth pushing forward. But at the moment, most of these control mechanism we put in place seems to be working thus far, and we hope that will be the case in the coming years. And with this, these are some of our experiences, and as I mentioned before, the pandemic has been it's a global tragedy, but it's also for small developing island states. We are also seeing the global pandemic as the Honorable Minister mentioned, as a catalyst. And this have also sped up a lot of development within the digital space as we try to progress and implement a lot of digital solutions that will better protect our citizens, and also government to provide services in digital forms that are effective and are cost effective for citizens. And with this, thank you again for listening and for having me this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Domingo. For a small island developing state like Kiribati, you seem to be doing a lot, and that's very impressive. Next up, we have Peter Rigamoto, who is the head of legal for Digicel Pacific, based out of Fiji. And Peter, I know that you have been involved in a whole lot of community awareness of cyber safety awareness, and so we'd like to hear more from you on what you've been up to lately.
Thank you, Cherie. Bula everyone. I hope you can hear me well. I just have some slides to quickly share. Now, my name is Peter Rigamoto, as already said. I've had 13 years experience at Digicel as the lawyer for 5 Pacific countries at the moment, head of legal for the Pacific. I have a keen interest in cybersecurity and have made submissions in cybersecurity in both Tonga and Fiji. And we also do a lot of advocacy together with various stakeholders, which is part of what I'll be speaking of today. Now, I'm very excited to be here, of course, because I'm the only person in Fiji wearing a jacket at 2 in the morning. But it is excellent to be presenting here at the Caribbean and inaugural SIDS IGF I'm sure there'll be a lot of synergies and commonalities between our various countries. And I will try and tie the cybersecurity, cybercrime, and digital justice, as on this slide, together with the internet governance priorities for ICT and ICT-driven development. So just briefly on what I'll be talking about, what I think we are, the problems we have, the things that we are using to fix those problems, and some gap fill. So my favorite slide when doing presentations, that's my daughter. If you guys have seen the Disney movie Moana, she's just like this. So one thing with us in the Pacific, we're surrounded by water. And after spending 2 weeks in Jamaica once, I know that the Caribbean also has these beautiful beaches. But there can also be, how do you say, detriments to being so close to the water. So my lovely daughter was unfortunately stuck in Tonga when there was a tsunami, and we weren't able to speak for 2 weeks because the communications to that island country was down. So it's just a key example of how communications are so important. And there are dangers out there in the sea. But thankfully, in these small island developing states, we have big hearts. We have a lot of resilience from these natural and cyber disasters that befall us. So as the honorable leaders of our states, and as the Honorable Minister, Mr. Davidson Ishmael, said previously, we have a lot of advocates for the ocean. So moving on to my next slide, these are some of our Pacific advocates for the ocean. Our Prime Minister from Fiji, Frank Bainimarama, and Nobel Prize nominee from Tuvalu, Honorable Minister Simon Kofe, who is also part of this SIDS delegation from the Pacific. So you'll get to hear from him also later. We're also big fans of the Honorable Prime Minister for Barbados, Honorable Miyamoto. I've watched a lot of her videos. But these are keen advocates for climate change and the environment. And what I'll be speaking about today is also the fact that we need keen advocates and those interested in the cybersecurity space in the Pacific, like the others who are presenting here today. As Cherie's already alluded to, we have, thankfully, many cables in the 5 Pacific countries that I have purview over: Fiji, Samoa, Tonga, Vanuatu, and Nauru. Only Nauru still requires satellite connection, and they'll be getting a cable in a few years, I believe. Now, what we see everywhere, though, is, and I believe it was Cherie who said, there was an expansion in phishing and cybercrime over the last 3 to 5 years, and this is likely why. So if you look at the diagram from 2015 to 2020, this is the gigabits per second coming into Fiji. It went from 2.5 up to circa 20. So you're around about sorry, my math isn't good, that's why I'm a lawyer, around about an 8 times increase in traffic in just a few short years. So with this exponential growth, you see the people on the right, the government of Fiji also implemented COVID relief through mobile financial services. So you have a dramatic increase in internet utilization, you have a dramatic increase in utilization of other means of payment other than cash. And as the man from the Caribbean who also moved to New York, Biggie Smalls, once said, more money, more problems. So what we have is in Fiji a lot more problems because of more technology, and we have remittance transactions of almost $100,000 where funds were going the wrong way. We have a company that lost $500,000 to an online scam. And on a smaller scale, but also important, a lady who was 65 years old that lost $70. Thankfully, somebody gave her the $70, but there are degrees to cybercrime, but it affects everybody. Now, moving right along, what we do have. So I said we talk about where we are, what our problems are, and now moving to what we have. We have a lot of different bodies in Fiji: the Fiji Police, Online Safety Commission, Fiji Revenue Customs, FICAC, which is the Anti-Corruption Division. And we have a lot of interested people. So advocates like Cherie, myself, and a lot of these people in these photos who are a very small bunch. We in the Pacific might lack the technology and the resources of the bigger countries like Australia and New Zealand in our region. But we have a very dedicated group of people that continually get together to try and fill the gaps in the cybersecurity space. And so volunteers and experts, we have coffee sessions to plan what is coming up next and conduct school visits. Now, looking at the regulation and the structures in the Pacific, Nauru and Fiji don't have a cert yet. The others do. Everybody has some form of a Cybercrime Act, whereas Vanuatu has some cybercrime provisions, and they have a bill currently before Parliament. So there is a lot of development in this space. Everybody recognizes, as you can see from the next slide, we have so many organizations in the Pacific all recognizing the need for stronger cybersecurity. And finally, this is some of the advocacy that we do. We go to schools like this is Dudley High School. As you can see, we have several sessions a day. I think this is about 5 sessions. And we deliver the do's and don'ts about being smart online, not just this pamphlet, but there is more. And we're trying to fill those gaps because I'm sure the circumstances might be similar in the Caribbean, where we're at the mercy of the seas to some extent, but not having the resources doesn't mean that we don't have dedicated people trying to lead us towards the safest way to use the internet. And the reason it is a priority in terms of the unlocking of ICT development is we can only get our people to fully utilize the power of the internet if they believe it is somewhat safe. So that is key to why we have so many strong advocates for the safety of the internet in the Pacific, and we hope they continue to do their good work, and I thank them all for what they do, and also those in the Caribbean and all other small island developing states. Vinaka.
Naka. Thank you, Peter. Thank you to our panelists for the wonderful presentations and the great work that you're doing. The one thing that Peter said was advocates from the region and volunteers, and we're all doing this mostly at our free time. So I empathize with my speakers. I know, over here in Tonga, it's 3 a.m. So I know it's 2 a.m. in Fiji and Kiribati, probably a little bit later for Georgina. And I know that tomorrow morning you also have your day jobs. Thank you very much. I wanted to keep our session short just because of this whole thing around it is quite late. So I was just hoping for one question each, mostly going to the one that came to Georgina. Georgina, I'm going to read it out. I thank you for your answer as well. So the question was, Georgina, do you collect statistics on cyber incidents do organizations report on cyber incidents willingly? And so Georgina has answered with PNG CERT would collect the statistics. Unfortunately, at PNG, the PNG CERT itself is not within the PNG Department of ICT where Georgina is based and the CSOC is. So sharing of information is something that we are working on. I would say so far, CSOC has received 3 reports of government departments attacked. If you have a counter question for that, for Gina, please get our context from the CTU guys. If you have any other questions that you feel that we should answer for you from the region, the CTU guys could also get you in touch with me, and as a region on a more friendly time, we'd be happy to answer these questions for you. Domingo, you said something earlier about it was really interesting, and I was wondering if you could tell us something about how did you manage to get this SIM card? Was it something that was difficult for you to get access to? Was it something that was easily available? At internet governance forums, discussions, panels like this are where we as Pacific Islanders can learn from each other. So maybe another Pacific Island country could take on this same idea from you and learn from it. I say that because I'm a mom. I have 2 boys. I shouldn't be complaining because I am an internet specialist. So my kids would obviously be interested in the internet as well. But just knowing that there is such a facility is very encouraging. Domingo.
Yes. So we have a really good working relationship with most of our internet service providers, especially with one of the government partner, the BPP that we do with them on the rollout to outer islands. So the government subsidized them to establish infrastructures on these islands, and then from there they are paid by the government to get the facilities up and running. But from that sort of working relationship and our other partnership with our ISPs and through our regulator, we were able to draw, particularly on one, we have an experience with the South Korea, where they have an age verification sort of mechanisms where they have within the phones. I have no idea at the moment if it's still there, but this was back in 2018. So we draw from that. Draw from South Korea's experience, and then this is what we put down within our national cybersecurity strategy. And once this was endorsed by the government, the cabinet, we went, and then we are collaborating with ISPs on providing this sort of mechanism. But at the moment, because the regulator have certain license provisions to ISPs, they are now drafting more also a piece of regulations that will allow for them to offer this. But we have a meeting at the beginning of this year. It was quite, the ISP received the request quite, they are happy to have this. And I think from the commercial side of it, they see this as more customers. And then they are also pushing that they can have, they will put in place certain controls and mechanisms that will allow for a child-friendly SIM to only have access to child-appropriate, child-friendly content on the internet. But the technical part of the control mechanism, we have no visibility on that. It's within the ISP. So we have 2 major operators here. We have the Vodafone, Kiribati, and Ocean Link Limited. So at the moment, we'll be rolling out within the next few months these child SIMs, and access code from internet cafes that allow Wi-Fi access to students or our young population, where they have filtered content. But we know that, I mean, these sort of restrictions, children can always find a way to, get through and pass by this. But we are trying to also advocate a digital citizenship where providing this sort of child-friendly SIM card from a young age, the children grow up with a sense that they can rely on the internet, where they expose only to contents that are appropriate to them, educational in a way. And so in that sense, it will build more or less an expectation that the young population tends to see that if they go to the internet, it will be for them to get educational content or for entertainment without any freely accessible inappropriate site or content for them. So this is what we have in place. We haven't launched this. It's still in planning phase. It's only the regulation part of it. So once the regulation is endorsed by the minister, then it will be launched. But the capability is there. So the ISPs are quite positive that they can provide this to the students, which we are quite really happy with. So yeah, we hope, I mean, this can be, at the moment, we don't have stats. So we hope we are doing some right thing. So we hope over the years we can have a positive impact on that. Maybe later we can have a data that can show how this works for our country. Thank you.
Thank you, Domingo. That sounds pretty cool, and we look forward to hearing about when that gets endorsed and gets out into your public. Peter, I wanted to go to you. You said something about, and I know you well, so I guess I can ask you this. But you mentioned that, and from your legal background, because you know, we've had all those legal terms, and then you've been involved in the mobile technology regulation, and then coming down to, you mentioned that cybersecurity was something of your own interest. And so coming into these cybersecurity discussions, because Georgina and Domingo, they are technical people, so we have a responsibility to that. But coming from from your legal background, and then having to come into these cybersecurity discussions, and then hearing all these jargons, tell us a little bit about your experiences, just how easy or difficult it was, because we're talking about how the internet affects everybody. So cybersecurity, cyber safety, it's relevant for the whole community. But how do we technical people start speaking these everyday languages so that we can start telling people that start paying attention to your devices, updates, and things like that?
Okay, so I think my interest in it started about 6 years ago. We had some consultations with the CTO when they came down. The regulator from Salmon, now Gisa Purcell, she was at the CTO at the time. And we had an informal group coming out of those meetings that we used to meet monthly just to talk about if legislation comes, and so it was good to understand over the course of those meetings over the next 4 years or so, comparing the Budapest Convention to what the technical people on the ground thought should be protected. And then, in the Pacific, we have specific issues like trying to reverse intercept when we don't have IPv6. We have very limited IP addresses and those sorts of things, which make backward tracking from the internet difficult. So those are things that the more dialogue we have, the more I learned about those technical things. And it was easy because there were people willing to discuss them. So I guess safe spaces with interested people would be my recommendation.
Well, thank you for that, Peter. And on that note, Domingo, and he's always talked about awareness in the communities, and I think from one of the government departments in the Tourism Association, he talked about how when the Ministry of ICT started educating the government departments about the need to update your devices and stay safe online, was when people started paying attention as well. So there is a question. I'd like to go to the question that is here to all panelists from Nigel. And I think that, and anybody could answer it first if you had an answer for it. Is there any policy or legislative work taking place in your countries regarding personal data protection?
Perhaps if I may, Cherie. Unfortunately, Kiribati is also embarking on a digital transformation. Government digital transformation project that is funded by the World Bank. So the project will be launched within the next 2 weeks. So it's a substantial investment by the World Bank, trying to transition the government services into digital services. So one of the activities within this project, and it will happen within the next. Actually, the timeline will be years, but for the data protection legislation work will be done within the next year or 1 year and a half, because we have some preliminary work that has been done for data protection legislations that we have done before, especially on gap analysis within our existing legislations in place. So this is one, it's an ongoing activity for us, and we are quite definite that it will be done within those time frame, within a year and a half, because funds is with the assistance from the World Bank, funds are there. It will be when we get the technical assistance from experts to assist us further in the drafting process and the actual validation and consultation with the general public and other government agencies. So yeah, if that answers the question. So actually, we've been trying to also explore other Pacific countries' data protection laws, but there is minimal information out there on data protection. So we hope if there are some countries within the region or even the Caribbean with data protection, we are very looking forward into seeing what they have in place already. Maybe we can draw from what they have and perhaps put them down into our legislation as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Domingo. Georgina, were you going to say something?
Yes, thank you. Data protection policy is it's in our plan to for the policy, and after the policy comes the act. At the moment, we have the Digital Government Act 2022, which got gazetted for commencement just a few weeks ago. So within that act, we are dealing with data governance. So in the type of tech, we are planning to standardize the type of technology used for data collection within government. So it covers the personal data's collection. So for we respect, we are considering mandates from different agencies that they collect the data. So from our department, we are focusing on infrastructure, technology, and security, where we put standards around it. Thank you.
Thank you, Georgina. Peter, I'm going to read out a question that is addressed to you in the chat, and then I know that you all have to catch a few hours of sleep before you go into work. So after that, then I'm just going to have each of you just wrap up with your final words. So Peter, the question is, this is from Kevon Swift of LACNIC. Experiences, lessons learned you can share regarding raising cyber awareness among vulnerable groups such as the elderly and people who are not digitally savvy. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Kevin. For the most part, we've done quite a few presentations to groups like this who are very tech savvy, and a lot of school children, so mostly high schoolers. And with those high schoolers, they are quite tech savvy actually. You know, they know what you can use, but they don't necessarily know all the dangers. So we take them through phishing, identity theft, what to look out for, tell them about cases in the community where people can be fooled. I speak in terms of raising this with vulnerable groups. If we can speak in the vernacular, I speak in the vernacular to them, for instance, to make a point about you never know who's behind the profile. You know, it could be someone who's 50 or 60, but you think they're 16 and you're chatting with them. So, you know, those sorts of things come to light. And also, once we talk to them, we tell them, can you please tell your parents, your grandparents, and everybody else that you can tell? You know, just that one more level up go home today, if they don't know about it. One of the things we found also was they had these gifting circles, sort of like a Ponzi scheme of a sort that was happening a lot in Fiji. And we asked all the children to put up their hands if their parents did it, and at least half of them put up their hands. So we had to explain to them what that was about, and, you know, please have a chat with your parents as well. So it's bring things down to a level they can understand without all the technical jargon that we might use in these sorts of environments, and give them key takeaways that they can take back home. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. I think Georgina has dropped off. So there's a comment in the chat from Nigel. So we'll just go straight into final comments. If you could indicate whether there are any initiatives to harmonize relevant digital policies and regulations among the Pacific Islands, if there's anything that you can think of.
Not that I know of. There's a few regional initiatives that we've had in the past. We had PIRRC, which is a regional resource. We had PACCERT, which is a regional cert. We have PACSON, which is cybersecurity awareness. So there are regional initiatives, but I'm not sure if they're not yet telling us all to do it the same way, if that makes sense.
If I may, sorry to intervene. I just wanted to also mention that there is also BLON, which is a Pacific Island lawyers, some sort of network. But we've been, they are also, which we also want to acknowledge them in parts that they are also quite instrumental when we try to formulate our cybercrime law, legislation. So in fact, this was one of the Pacific Island Lawyers Association, but most of these, the BLON is members are from attorney generals representative across the Pacific countries. So most of them involves also drafters and other legal representative from each Pacific Island countries, and I think this is that is what they are envisioning. So they are now starting from. So for us, we are engaged in cybercrime legislation establishment. So Tonga took the lead. So they are the ones that are now parties to the convention. And a lot of the Pacific countries are trying to also get trying to model their laws on the Budapest Convention, and they are also trying to accede to the convention eventually. And there are also e-commerce legislations that have been also developed alongside BELON, but most of them are through UNDP with the Pacific. I think it's but that one was led by the Commerce Ministry. But yes, I think that there might be some sort of regulatory frameworks that are trying to be consistent across. But I think there should be there needs to be improvement on the synergies so that most of these regulations and frameworks, regulations around these spaces can all be in a way, standard across the region. So we can also try to, we have a more or less a similar law when we talk on these specific issues.
Thanks, Domingo. So yes, that is the Pacific Island Law Officers Network, and they do have a cybercrime working group, and a lot of it's really, like you mentioned, aligned to the Budapest Convention, with also the assistance from the Council of Europe. So Domingo, did you want to go on to you? I don't see Georgina back. She's probably been late on her side as well. So we'll go on to your final words, Domingo, before we wrap up for tonight.
Sorry, come again, Cherie. So what's...
Oh, we're just wrapping up. So your final words.
Oh, okay. My bad, sorry. So yeah, initially thanks to the Caribbean IGF for having us. I think we hope that these experiences that we share and the challenges that we also share could also be beneficial to similar Caribbean, small island states, because in essence, we all share similar economic and social challenges in terms of our development. So we hope what we share could be beneficial towards other development aspirations the Caribbean nations are doing. And we hope to collaborate and also want to learn more from our Caribbean colleagues, what works for them and what's not, so that we also can apply best practices from their side to our country. And with that, thank you, Cherie, for having us, and especially the CTU and the Caribbean Internet Governance Forum for having us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Domingo. Thank you, Peter. I think for me, the best takeaway of this session was seeing that even though we are very small island developing states, very small Pacific Island countries, there's a lot that we are involved in because we have, the internet is now here. We need to keep ourselves safe. We need to keep our communities safe. And the best way that we could do these things is working together as a community and learning from each other as a region. Like tonight, like this morning, we heard data protection laws. PNG is probably thriving in that area. Maybe Kiribati and PNG could exchange contacts, and we start talking along those lines. We also heard about, the SIM cards for kids. I think that's incredible, and I look forward to hearing more about that. Peter as a community champion. We need more people like you, Peter. If we could replicate you across all the 5 Pacific Island countries that you represent, that would be so amazing. But doing great work, and for us technical people to be able to have people from the community that can assist us in these kind of awareness is just amazing. With the Global Forum on Cyber Expertise, we're currently putting together a Pacific hub. And so, Nigel's questions around harmonizing regulation, we want to come in and, empowering, building and assisting local communities, but at the same time here to connect needs and resources for the Pacific, where like Domingo has asked for help with data protection. The GFC, being a big community, may have first kind of resources where we could connect you to, but I'm not flying the banner promoting the GFCE, but we learn from each other, we exchange knowledge, we exchange information, and want to thank the Caribbean IGF and also the CTU team for facilitating this first SIDS IGF. It was probably very difficult to coordinate and collaborate across so many of our sessions, across so many time zones, but thank you very much for having us, and thank you for allowing us this session. Naka Vakalevu and Malau Pito from Tonga.
Thank you so much to our esteemed panelists. It's time for a 15-minute coffee break. Do you guys remember yesterday's fun? Well, get ready to challenge yourself with some word scramble. Hidden in the virtual booths of this week's events and partners are letter cards. Once you locate all the letters, just head on over to the engagement page where you'll find all the contests available for this week and submit the word in the word scramble contest for today. It's that simple. The first person to correctly submit the word will win, get this, a US $50 Amazon gift card. The game is going to be open for only 5 minutes, so head on over there now and play. Good luck. We'll be right back. I'm DJ Anna. Welcome back, ladies and gents. I'm DJ Anna. We hope you enjoyed that segment and your coffee break. Right after this panel, you will be competing again soon. But first, I'd like to welcome my guests who are here in person. I'd like to say hi once again to Mr. Rodney Taylor, the Secretary General of the CTU. And I'd also like to welcome Ultrasimo, renowned DJ, media personality, radio host, Hollywood actor, business owner, and my co-worker. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
So today we're going to be having a little discussion about social media platforms and how they are central points of control on the internet. So let's jump into it.
Well, I guess I would ask from a layman's perspective, what is internet governance, right? Because as a user of the internet, as most of the viewers here, we would come onto the internet, or we would have both been born into the internet era and not really think of what internet governance is, or the fact that somebody does govern the internet. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, thanks for the question, because the internet itself is a global resource. I mean, it connects people everywhere. There are about 5 billion people connected globally. There is no one single entity that controls the internet, but there are a few key international organizations that manage different aspects of it. So the technical infrastructure, the fiber optic cables, the satellite communications, a lot of that is managed by the International Telecommunications Union, which is a specialized agency of the United Nations. There's also the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers that manages the domain name system. So when you type in www.roties.com, whatever.com, it is linked to a number, an IP address, a public IP address that takes you where you can find that web page. Now, imagine that happening globally. You're accessing websites in China, in Germany, in the United States, in Canada. All of that is being managed through a global domain name system, and there's an organization that manages that, and there are policies and standards associated with that. There are also other regional registries like the American Registry for Internet Numbers, LACNIC, and others that set regional policies, and there are other organizations, a whole set of them. Governments, of course, are involved. Governments set policies, not so much sometimes on technical standards, but on other softer issues like cybersecurity, for example. Governments may say what is legal, not legal, in terms of harassment, and those things are governed by laws which are set by governments. And all of that is part of the internet. So it's a very complex issue.
Okay. So when we delve into the aspects of social media, for myself and Simo, we would probably look at it through the lens of content. But looking at social media from the lens of internet governance is obviously very different, because you have to start looking at policies, technical architectures that could pose several challenges to maintaining, the rights of people on the internet. So when you look at internet usage, obviously social media is used by primarily youths. Probably 80% of social media users are youths. So if we are to look at how this affects youths in terms of their ability to have security on these apps, how will internet governance play a role in that?
Yes, and that's why we had the Caribbean Youth Internet Governance Forum for the first time. And for the first time this week, I did my first boomerang. So I think we did a TikTok as well to promote it. So social media obviously is a new space where people socialize and interact. And so now it brings in a whole set of issues. Protecting copyright, for example. If you own intellectual property, the ability to repost stuff that's not yours, how do you protect your rights as an artist? Mm-hmm. How do you even promote a business, for example, online, build up a social following and earn revenue through that? But also, how do you protect young people from harmful content? For example, from harassment, from fake news, from things that they should not be exposed to. Mm-hmm. All of those things are governed by policies, right? If there's no policy, if there's no legislation, then it's a free-for-all. And in a sense, the internet is sort of a free-for-all, because depending on what governments allow and not allow, even things like intellectual property, as I mentioned, that has to be protected by law, right? And yes, there are global frameworks that protect intellectual property, but locally as well, it has to be understood that the rights of artists are protected, and that it is their intellectual property, and therefore, even though you're on social media platforms, there are rules and standards and norms that you should abide by.
Right, because of adolescents' emotional volatility and their tendency to act impulsively.
Oh, yeah.
They are more vulnerable than adults. Techniques such as real-time bidding, location targeting, and dynamic creative ads that are usually tailored to their age categories.
Exactly.
So is there a policy that would have to be put in place to prevent this?
So absolutely, you touched on a few things, like data protection, for example, is one. So for those young people that give all of their information on social media, there are people who said like privacy is dead, for example, because everybody posts everything they're doing, right? If I'm having a sandwich on the avenue,
your breakfast,
right?
Everything.
It's there on Instagram, it's there on wherever else is posted. So people are tracking your, and the big tech companies also, because they track so much data, location, images, your connections, even transactions, and all of that is brought together, and so they create a digital profile of you, and therefore how do you protect that? And we advocate for things like data protection legislation, so that even though the companies may not be operating here or registered here, they understand that there is certain protections that they have to give to their customers. Even though the service is free, still you don't want an invasion of your privacy.
Right, because we were recently talking about TikTok. Right. And it being banned in India, for example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because when we were over in India on tour, it was legal, and then like a week later, the Indian government shut down TikTok a couple of years ago. So each country, you would say, would have its own set of rules and policies. But my question is, who enforces these rules? As in, is it that there is an internet police, or who actually? Because in the Caribbean and Trinidad, we have a lot of rules and laws, but not all of them are actually checked on a daily basis.
So there are certain things that the global community agree on, right? For example, things like child pornography, right? Everybody knows that that's bad, and therefore, the international, if you go to an ICANN or ITU, that's something that there are resolutions that address that. There are other things that are not so black and white. For example, freedom of expression. Mm-hmm. Right? Freedom of expression. People, U.S. is big on freedom of speech, freedom of expression, But when does that go too far? When you're harassing people or you're spreading fake news and it results in someone being injured or killed as a result of this fake news. Right. So some policies are set globally. In fact, this is why we want to have forums like this so that people understand where those policies are set. And people understand also that you don't have to be a technical expert to be involved in discussions around these issues of social media and harassment. Because ultimately, you also want to set global policy, but you want to impact local policy and legislation as well, so that your governments and other stakeholders are aware, your internet service providers are aware and agree on what is accepted socially. So,
does internet governance affect the performance of the internet to people? As in, a random person would take out their phone or would go on a computer, and their interaction with the internet, whether it's on the streaming platforms and to watch content or just to find out what's happening in their community, or even to get their own news. Does internet governance play a role with regards to everybody's own experience on the internet?
Absolutely. And so the experience, first of all, is what is the quality of your internet access? So if you're on a WhatsApp call and it's dropping every 2 minutes, that's obviously not a good experience, not a good quality. If you're trying to watch DJ Anna and DJ Simo and it's sticking and buffering, that's horrible. A problem, right? That's horrible. We don't want that. We want good, high quality access to you, right? So how are those things impacted? They're impacted by the implementation of things like internet exchange points, which really means that instead of traffic going out of the country, coming back in, it is routed locally where possible, and that allows Google, Netflix to cache some of that content locally. So rather than streaming from North America, we're pulling that content locally. The experience is a lot better.
Oh, so basically, your favorite show, instead of it being streamed from the US, it would be streamed from here.
Correct.
In the Caribbean.
Because they cache the content here. They want you to have a better experience as well. And therefore, how the internet is configured helps in terms of performance, in terms of resilience, if there's disruption on the international bandwidth, because the internet is really a network of networks. So network in Trinidad, network in Barbados, network in Jamaica, and how do we connect these efficiently so that traffic is routed in the most effective manner.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Mr. Rodney Taylor, and thank you, Ultra Simo, for joining us. We really enjoyed that brief but informative discussion.
My pleasure.
Guys, it's time for us to jump into the discussion panel on the regional digital strategies and the digital economy. We invite the moderator of this session, Mr. Gary Kalu, to take the floor, and Gary will be joined by our esteemed panelist, Mr. M. Raj Mohabeer, Officer in charge of the economy, maritime security, regional connectivity, migrations, and SIDS. We also have Andrea Giocamelli from Geneva Pacific Ecommerce Initiative and Rodney Taylor, Secretary General of the CTU. So yes, definitely we're going to enjoy this next panel, and we have Mr. Kalu who's going to be joining us very soon. I have Mr. Rodney Taylor here with me, of course, and he's ready for the discussion, so I'm looking forward to it. Yes, and guys, of course, you're taking in the CIGF. Yes, we're having a great time at the Caribbean Internet Governance Forum, brought to you by the CTU. Don't forget that you guys can post your questions in the Who Below platform, and we will respond to them very soon. So at this point, I'd like to welcome Mr. Kalu, who is here on our panel.
Yes, good morning to all. Thank you, Anna. Yes, morning to all participants joining us regionally, and those joining us, of course, we welcome those joining us from the Pacific side. We know it's very early there, and we appreciate, your participation. And yes, the next session is going to be a panel discussion on regional digital strategies and digital economy. And this is key. I mean, when we look at how we progress the economy and how we move development, one of the key aspects is to ensure that there are strategies, and more so as we move into ICT and digital environment, we expect that digital strategies will inform and will create the development and social inclusion that we need to ensure sustainability in our economy. So this is a very important area, and we now would like to invite our panelists. We have three panelists who will be joining us in these discussions today. They have already been introduced by DJ Anna, but I'll just mention them again. We have Mr. Raj Mohabeer, Andrea Giocamelli, and Mr. Rodney Taylor. So I'd like to now invite Mr. Mohabeer to give us some opening remarks, or if there's a presentation that he wishes to present to us, the floor is open to him now.
Yeah, thank you very, very much for inviting the Indian Ocean Commission to this very important, I should say, subject matter. I understand that I have some 10 minutes to intervene. I haven't prepared any presentation. In fact, I was thinking of doing that. Now, here in Mauritius, which is the headquarters of the Secretariat of the Indian Ocean Commission, which is an intergovernmental organization of the 5 island states of the Western Indian Ocean region. But then I just wanted to say that our activities do not just restrict into only our geographical regions, but our activities spans over maybe the whole world. In one of the areas in which I have been very active since I joined the IOC 20 years ago is the issue of small island developing states. And one of the most important aspects of the SIDS and for the development challenges is for us to recognize that the ICT is now what we say a sine qua non prerequisite for any regional activities, national activities, local activities, anywhere. So we can't think of anything without bringing in ICT. We can't think of any regional project without bringing in the ICT component of it. So ICT is in everywhere, and it's true, but for many reasons, we tend to take it as granted that we are able to manage, but whether we want it or not, we have to ensure that ICT is part of all our activities and part of all our actions. And this is where it is very opportune that we have an inter-regional exchange on this subject matter. And I'm indeed very happy for the invitation that we got from CTU to participate in this event. And I hope that our contribution will help to understand and exchange experiences, what we've been doing in our region, and learn from you as well, and maybe learn from elsewhere. Now, first of all, I think it's very, very difficult in our region, at least, to come up with a regional policy on ICT. And what I will do in the rest of the remaining time that I have to intervene is not to make such, talk about what we could do or should do, but what we've done. And I think this can lead us to think about what are the points on which we can exchange. First of all, this region, many of the island states, or all of the island states, and most of them are small island developing states, small economies. We had traditional IT companies which were dominant. And the tendency by all the government was to reinforce that dominance. And at the end of the day, we were in a situation of quasi-monopoly of these companies. And that prevented, new incumbent companies to join in and to improve the, how can I say, the access, in terms of cost, in terms of quality, etc., of IT services to the population. And why this is so is because, for example, we had until last March, we had the same company provided broadband internet services in the islands, you know. So in fact, some countries were linked to submarine cables, but in fact, they were all the same owner behind. And this is what we tried to change. And, you know, the International Commission, what we did, instead of speaking about it, instead of, you know, getting the countries and the policymakers to be looking at these things, what we did is that we looked at the demand for, you know, broadband connectivity for the future. Now, what the situation was that we had the two the cables. One is nearly 25 years of age. It's nearing, you know, being nearly outdated, but it's still working. And the other one was 12 years of age. Both of them, one was 0.8 terabytes, and the other one was 1.28 terabytes. And we all know that the demand for connectivity and broadband connectivity was increasing exponentially. And we had to make provision also for, you know, the latest technology in terms of broadband connectivity. And we had to bring in new infrastructure. So we tried to initiate many studies, etc. But finally, in 2016, we did a feasibility study for establishing, you know, a new infrastructure. And then we came up with some principles. And some of the key principles was to ensure that there is no single dominant player in the consortium which we worked on. And we did the financial studies, we did the market studies, we did all the technical studies, etc. And then we demonstrated that, you know, there was, the market was still very large. And then we invited private sector companies which are in the area, but not really accessing broadband connectivity from the countries, from the region. And then we got a consortium to be done. So initially, what we did is that initially the IOC, the International Commission, was leading the project formulation, the studies, etc. And then when we selected the key private sector partners, and then we signed a sort of an MOU. And we agreed on the principles. Based on the principles that we agreed on the MOU, we then left and accompanied the consortium to design the project and then establish the cable. And in March last year, we finally succeeded in establishing a new cable where there is no dominant partner, and the existing traditional partners or the traditional operators, they are not in there. So in other words, that the new infrastructure has enabled a democratization of broadband access to the population. So now there is competition and extreme competition amongst all the players. And hence, this is one of the key actions that we did. The other key thing that we did what CTU is doing right now, is to sensitize on the need for ensuring that any particular projects that we can do, that we should be having, you know, very specific and very concrete IT components in there, and then see to it that these are being done. Now, in concrete terms, we have tried to develop regional projects, and we are still trying to negotiate so that we can implement those projects. One of the biggest problems of small island developing states is that, you know, when it concerns, for example, connecting countries in a continent, so you have to build roads, railways, that's easy. And you see that there are lots of funding that comes in to these kind of projects. But when we are small island developing states, when we're trying to get ourselves connected, like for example, maritime connectivity, etc., then we get much difficulty in getting partners. So I think one of the very important, and I would like to take it as a takeaway, one of the very important actions that I strongly believe that we have to do is to team up as part of SIDS and SIDS advocates to collectively look at how well we are doing in terms of accessing or in terms of benefiting from development partners, development aid and or partnerships in order to improve on various aspects of connectivity. And in this, I think that one thing that we could do is to work out on a sort of an observatory on the key elements that could help us to guide us on how well we are doing in terms of connectivity and in terms of internet penetration and in terms of providing, services that are needed without, spending long queues and without going, to far away services, etc. So, in fact, what we see is that there are, the private sector is playing the game only if there is funding opportunities, not elsewhere. So I would say let's have a sort of a takeaway and a joint action that we can put on the table, that we can get other partners to join us and then work collectively for all the SIDS in terms of accessing to development funds, but also work on an observatory on a defined set of indicators that would help us to understand whether we are doing very well or how bad we are doing compared to other countries, of course, and then that would help us to guide us where we could go. So that is my takeaway. I would say that there are lots and lots of things that we could do, but given the time limitation, I thought I could just give one example of the concrete action that we did in our region. That the importance of IT should not be underestimated, that there is a need for more work, but I believe that because we are SIDS and the regional organizations working for SIDS, we are not in a better place to negotiate for development fund. So I think this is an area where we could be working together so that we can, see to it that the region and all the SIDS are really benefiting and up pace with other more developed countries in terms of IT penetration. So two concrete takeaways. One is establish an observatory for SIDS in IT, and on other one, specifically look at, and maybe we can just include it in the observatory, about our how well we are accessing development funds, or how badly we are accessing, especially with respect to the penetration of IT in all of the spheres of regional national projects and development strategies. So let me stop here just to be on time, because I have this very bad habit of talking a lot, and in fact I can take I would prefer to keep the time that can be allocated to me to respond to particular questions if you have. So thank you very much again, CTU, for inviting the IOC. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Mohabeer. I think some of the points that you touched on there are not unique to your SIDS environment. I think it's also issues that we in the region here also grapple with in terms of funding. Funding is always an issue. And then how do we measure our progress, and how can we continue to to develop systems that can monitor and that we can continue to show improvements based on real measurements and real statistics that we take. So that's a key point. And I think one of the other key points that you raise in terms of certainly in terms of ICT being so strategic and a key pillar for social development and economic development, that it's almost impossible to ignore it. And you all have recognized that and made steps in sort of demonopolizing the market and creating an environment for competition, which I think was very, very important when you start looking at progressing and fostering development in the region. And perhaps a next important point is bringing in and involving the private sector in the development. The private sector is a key stakeholder, and I think they cannot be left out of the ICT environment, and certainly can't be left out of the development agenda. So thank you very much for those points. We would now like to move on to our second presenter, Mr. Andrea Giocamelli from the Pacific E-commerce Initiative, to give us, I guess, an update on the Pacific E-commerce Initiative. I'd like now to turn over to Mr. Giocamelli.
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Yes, this is Andrea Giocamelli from the Pacific Island Forum, and I am the technical lead of what we have called Pacific E-commerce Initiative, which is an initiative which tries to improve e-commerce readiness across the region. I have prepared a short presentation to give you an update on this initiative. I hope you can see the presentation. Can you see the screen?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, thank you, Raj. Okay, so I used to start a presentation on the e-commerce initiative with this simple graph, which signals, if you see the red dots, I mean, you have on the horizontal axis the population of the world countries, and on the vertical axis you have the distance weighted over the GDP of each country towards the main markets. And the green triangles are the Caribbean countries, whereas the red dots are the Pacific Island countries. And you can see that on average and as a group, really the Pacific Island countries are really the smallest and the most distant grouping of SIDS in the world. And obviously, because of this peculiar feature, it is obvious that reducing the tyranny of distance and pursuing development opportunities that can be less affected by our small size, it's really a priority for Pacific Islands. And this is why actually e-commerce was included as a priority of our Regional Aid for Trade strategy, which was endorsed back in 2020 by our trade ministers. Essentially, e-commerce allows businesses to use these virtual channels to connect with clients and with other business across the world. And by doing so, it reduces the investment costs to start a business or to operate it. And more importantly, it reduces the impediments to growth, which are generated by physical distance. In fact, for some, if you think about the services sector, for some services, this tyranny of distance can be completely eliminated. You can think about, a smart web designer in a remote Pacific island who, if he is connected with a reliable ICT network, and if he has the right skills and education, and nowadays he can compete on par through global e-commerce platforms with graphic designers that are located in in major metropolis across the world, like New York or Sydney or Paris. So this is really the reason why for the Pacific, e-commerce within the trade realms represent one of the top regional priorities. Now, regional work on e-commerce started in 2017, actually, and we commenced by undertaking harmonized diagnostic studies using a methodology devised by the UNCTAD, which assesses the e-commerce readiness of a country in 7 policy areas, including the policy development itself, the readiness of the ICT system, the ability of a country to undertake and process e-payments, logistics and trade facilitation for e-commerce, the legal and regulatory environment that the CTU was talking about, the presence of development skill programs to develop skills for e-commerce, and of course the ability to source access to finance for developing e-commerce ventures. Now, these diagnostic studies were undertaken in 11 of our 14 developing countries member between 2017 and 2021. And then in 2021, we used these assessments to inform a Pacific regional e-commerce strategy and roadmap, which was finally endorsed by our forum trade ministers in August 21. The strategy includes 54 measures, which cover the 7 UNCTAD e-commerce policy areas that I was talking about. And now that the strategy has been approved, the focus has shifted on implementation. As you can see, this is what this next slide provides a simplified overview of what we are implementing so far together with our different partners in each of the policy area. Given the limited amount of time, I won't go into details of implementation, but you can see that different partners and different implementing agencies were identified by our regional strategy as key implementing agencies in specific policy areas. And some of these agencies are already undertaken significant work, which is aligned with the recommendation of the strategy. These agencies include, for example, the United Nations ESCAP, which is undertaken readiness assessment in some of our countries, and it is promoting the joining of these countries to the framework agreement on facilitation of cross-border paperless trade in Asia and the Pacific. We have the E-Trade Alliance, which is a UN-sponsored alliance of global multinationals, which is undertaking work in the area of trade logistics, skills, and payments, and e-payments. We have the PPIU, which is the implementation unit of a regional trade agreement that we have just developed in the Pacific, which is doing work on policy development and strategy development, as well as on enhancing the readiness of the postal system for e-commerce. We have SPC, which is our top technical agency, which is doing work on e-commerce statistics. My predecessor was talking about the importance of measuring progress on e-commerce, and I can be able to show you, if we have time, what we have done in this area just recently. We have other regional agencies like Pacific Trade and Invest, which is our network of trade commissions, which is doing work on e-payments and skills development. And then different UN agencies, UNCTRAL, UNCTAD, UNCDF, which are doing work to implement recommendation in different areas. Now, also the Pacific Island Forum Secretariat, which is the agency that I represent, is doing specific work, especially in the area of policies and regulations, skill development, and e-commerce assessment. Just focusing on that, what we have done so far is we have developed and administered a regional training course for Pacific negotiator on e-commerce regulation. Once again, the present initial remarks from the CTU was talking about the importance of this national policy and regulation. But of course, these policies, national policies, are affected by the global environment in this area. And in the area of e-commerce, there is a lot of work going on at multilateral level, especially at the WTO, and so on different disciplines related to e-commerce. And is therefore important to provide our members with the skills to engage proactively in this in discussion that happen at multilateral level. And that's what we try to do with this training course. After the development of the regional strategy, we are also supporting, together with our partners, the development of national e-commerce strategies, which are aligned with the regional strategy and which follow the same methodological framework. And obviously, harmonization of national strategies is a precondition for all the region to speak the same language and to improve and to facilitate intra-regional cooperation. On statistics, we have developed and just launched on the 24th of August, the first ever regional e-commerce statistical database, which includes 37 indicators on the enabling environment for e-commerce in the 7 policy areas for e-commerce that I was talking about. If we have time and you have interest, I will be able to show you briefly what this database look like, maybe later. We are mindful of the importance of e-commerce for private sector. We have also developed harmonized regional methodologies for providing businesses with simplified and practical toolkits aimed at helping our micro, small, and medium enterprises who want to start undertaking an e-commerce journey. We have also launched a regional grant scheme for e-commerce businesses aim at promoting indeed this online journey that I was talking about. This is what we have done in terms of implementation, but of course the PIPS, as the premier regional agency, has also been tasked to coordinate the work of all these different partners that are active in the e-commerce space. We are doing so through different tools. The first is the Pacific e-commerce portal that, as I was saying, was launched on the 24th of August. You can see the web link over there on the slide, and we can visit it if you like. If you want, I can give you a brief tour if we have a few seconds after in the question and answer sessions. But so this e-commerce portal serves as regional repository of e-commerce information in a number of different fields, including the monitoring evaluation of the actions that our implementing partners are doing to implement the Pacific Regional e-commerce strategy and roadmap, as well as the statistic database on e-commerce readiness of our members. We are also in the process of establishing a small e-commerce unit at the PIPS, which will, amongst other things, manage and upgrade our e-commerce regional e-commerce portal, but it will also serve as secretariat to a regional e-commerce committee whose member will be indeed the e-commerce focal point of the different countries. I think I'll close it here because my 10 minutes have elapsed. And so with that, I'll give it the floor back to you, and happy to join the question and answer sessions as required. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Giocamelli. I think you've given us a very, very comprehensive overview of your initiative with respect to the e-commerce and creating that's the digital economy from your inception all the way through to implementation, and now using the platform, you know, to measure and to progress the development of your e-commerce environment. So we're thankful, and we look forward to some questions from our audience as we go along. We'll hold the questions for a while until we hear from our third speaker, and he is Mr. Rodney Taylor, the Secretary General of the CTU, and I turn it over to you, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you very much, Gary. I'll just pull up my presentation here. Thanks for the opportunity to present on a regional initiative from this side of the world. And today I'm going to talk a bit about the CARICOM single ICT space, what that's about and what it means and how it benefits the region. And what the CARICOM, and we're all familiar, or most of us will be familiar with the whole idea of CARICOM itself and the group of countries that form CARICOM. And of course, the idea is to promote cooperation amongst the small states within this, the Americas region, mostly in the Caribbean Sea, and of course touching on mainland Guyana and Suriname. And beyond ICT, there are a whole set of other frameworks of cooperation, including education, travel, etc., security, from which the CARICOM heads of government cooperate. So the single ICT space is meant to provide an ICT-enabled foundation for enhancing both CARICOM's functional cooperation and fulfilling the social, cultural, and economic imperatives of the region. What it means really is that I talked about cooperation, but at a practical level, how do countries cooperate? How do they share systems, share infrastructure, in particular around information and communication technology, to improve the lives of citizens in the Caribbean, to facilitate cultural exchanges, and to drive business and trade within the region. So the CARICOM heads of government, which basically is the highest decision-making body of the CARICOM community, in 2014 gave a direction to establish this CARICOM single ICT space. Again, to encourage investment and production in this sector and to bring technology to the people. The space included, or the concept included, cybersecurity safeguards. So again, moving harmoniously from one CARICOM country to the next, setting common policies and legislation around cybersecurity. Mobilization of resources to fund the development of the ICT sector. Of course, bringing developmental funds to support private-public partnerships to invest in networks and help to improve the capacity of our networks regionally. To develop the CARICOM digital agenda, and they requested a roadmap for the single ICT space to be completed by the ICT cluster of agencies. And the ICT cluster of agencies include the CTU, of course, the Caribbean Telecoms Union, CARICAD, the Center for Development Administration, the Caribbean Broadcasting Union, which deals with broadcasting policy and so on regionally, the CARICOM Secretariat itself, and the CARICOM Implementing Agency for Crime and Security, mostly looking at the cybersecurity aspect of it. So the details, the plan was developed by the cluster agencies, the vision and roadmap was developed. It took about 3 years to develop. So in 2017, the roadmap was developed and approved by CARICOM heads of government with a 3 to 5 year implementation time frame. And of course, the implementation would include institutions and national governments. So the vision was an ICT-enabled borderless space that fosters economic, social, and cultural integration for the betterment of Caribbean citizens. So just picture moving freely around, and I'll tell you about one of the important initiatives coming out of this that supports that free movement of people and data and communication services. So again, a harmonized ecosystem across all of the CARICOM member states, dealing with policies. Policies are critical. I was discussing this in our segment before about the importance of policies and how they impact, you know, from one country to the next, what is legal, what is not legal, or what is accepted, what is not accepted. Government policies that may promote trade in one aspect or another, and so on. The legislation, of course, that provides a framework for all of this to happen. Regulations that govern communications, of course, across every sector: financial services, information and communication technology, agriculture. There are regulations that govern the sector, and therefore how do we standardize regulations in respect to information and communications technology so as to drive and promote investment, because there's predictability as you move from one CARICOM member state to the next. Technical standards, again, on things like spectrum and things like internet traffic and routing. I spoke about IXPs and so on. Best practices, networks, and services. So this is really just going more deeply into specific aspects of when we talk about policies, laws, and regulations, in what areas. Data protection, intellectual property regimes, for example. business facilitation, in particular in the ICT sector, how businesses are licensed to operate within the country, whether that's easy to do, whether that's difficult to do, to get a license, is it expensive, and that kind of business environment. A robust regional broadband infrastructure, so it is competitive. First of all, we ensure that there are no monopolies in any particular market that would stifle innovation, but that the market is competitive. You have, different players competing for customers, and therefore driving innovation, driving down the cost of service. There's redundancy, so that there isn't widespread disruption because of one cable break. There's high capacity in the subsea fiber systems, again, because more and more as more people log on to the internet, you want to ensure that there's a quality experience across the board as you move from one Caribbean country to the next. In terms of a regional framework for ICT service providers and consumers, equitable and affordable access to ICTs. So yes, good quality, but it has to be affordable to everyone, or at least there needs to be initiatives that could possibly subsidize access if that is needed for a certain segment of the society. Minimization and elimination of mobile voice and data roaming charges, and that's the one I'll tell you about afterwards, because that's something that has been delivered and much to the benefit of our citizens. I will move on to regionally connected government networks. So on the government side, of course, governments play a very critical role in driving business, in providing public services, whether it's your driver's license, your passport, a police certificate of character, any number of licenses to operate. And therefore, how do we modernize government systems and networks to enable the delivery of those public services? And also to facilitate regional interconnection and data transfer. So not only are we talking, if we're really serious about developing and building regional economies and CARICOM itself, there must be networks that are interconnected. There must be networks that facilitate the transfer of data and sharing of data. And I am familiar with such networks that already exist that facilitate the movement of people, for example, as they travel on airlines, the ability to clear passengers ahead of time, and so on, through a harmonized information system. E-delivery of government, social and commercial services. Of course, on top of that infrastructure, the applications that support the delivery of the services that I mentioned. Regional security, collaboration and management, regionally harmonized cybersecurity policy framework. So cybersecurity underpins all of this so that it is done in a harmonized and secure manner. I think I have, okay, so that was the last slide. And that sets the framework for what this whole, and you can stop sharing, what the whole CARICOM single ICT space is about. I'll speak very briefly on the issue of elimination of roaming charges. And just last year, we initiated discussions with the two major service providers within CARICOM, Digicel and Cable and Wireless, to negotiate the drastic reduction. Of course, we ultimately want to see the complete elimination of roaming charges within CARICOM, so that I can leave Barbados or leave Trinidad, go to Jamaica, and I'm roaming as though I'm at home. And as one Prime Minister stated, we want to roam like at home because we are at home within the CARICOM space. And therefore, we don't want to be to have bill shock, to come back home from our travels within CARICOM and have to face exorbitant fees on mobile data roaming or mobile calls or SMS messages. We know that connectivity is critical, and therefore we want the freedom to move, the freedom to communicate, but not have excessive charges. And we're able to successfully negotiate with the main providers, and there are other providers coming on board, and that is something that has already been implemented. What we're moving now more closely towards is the harmonization of the regulatory framework. The CARICOM heads of government have asked us to make recommendations on the implementation of a single regulator within CARICOM, again to give effect to the freedom of movement and to drive further investment within the sector and to improve the ease of doing business for those operators within the region. So I'll stop there for now, but that's the concept of the single ICT space, and that is one specific deliverable, I think, that has redounded to the benefit of our Caribbean citizens. Thank you. Over to you.
Good. Thank you. Certainly, thank you, Ashley Taylor, for that insightful introduction and certainly well prepared description of the single ICT space and what it entails, and also giving us some, I guess, some projects that have been already ongoing with respect to harmonizing the regional space with respect to one, the single regulator, and also for looking at the movement of people and the cost of roaming fees, certainly bringing that into some sort of harmonized rate across the region. So those are two areas that have already been addressed, or at least in the pipeline, in creating the single space. I'd like now to open up the floor for some questions, and I believe we do have some questions from our audience, so we can quickly look at some of the questions that are coming up. And we have a question from Janelle Lake, and I guess she asks, how are interested individuals in the community involved in the work? So how are we engaging, I guess the question is, how are we engaging civil society and individuals in this, in creating this, the regional strategies? Are we, how are we involving them in the process? And maybe I can start with Mr. Mohabeer to advise in their environment how they've been able to engage the public.
Okay, first of all, I'd like to make some comments, in fact, 4 comments, and not necessarily responding to your specific questions. But I think after hearing the presentations, I think there are a few things that we have to bear in mind. And I think the opportunity that you've given in this sort of seminar should bring us there. First, I think the different SIDS region like IOC, Caribbean, even Pacific are so different that the strategies for regional integration and how IT could contribute to regional integration will vary definitely. But I think this is where we can learn from. And I was really impressed by the last presentation that was made in terms of how the Caribbean region, it's like, they all agree that they will be integrated through IT. So that's my first point. Second point, I think that, yes, I saw a question where it is saying that, do we need to have a sort of a plan, etc., and then get to implement certain things? And I believe this is where exactly in our region, we are doing it differently. Instead of having a regional strategy and policy, we are trying to come up with regional tools and mechanisms from a bottom-up approach. The island states are so small, and their traditional markets are in Europe, here and there, and we're trying to get linked to African countries. So the strategy cannot be the same. So I think this is the second thing. Now, I think I'd like to come to a point that we have the tendency to bring in the population only on economic grounds. And I think this is where we'll have to rethink and think a bit differently. Let me give you one example. You see, as small and developing states, we have very small land area, but very large EEZs. How does each of the SIDS ensuring surveillance and control of their EEZ zones. How? And what I have seen, I haven't yet looked at, for example, in the Caribbean and Pacific region, but what I've seen is that if you do not use IT, then I'm sorry, you cannot claim sovereignty on your EEZ because others are doing whatever they want in the oceans. We've tested that. So we have to look IT not from the perspective only on how it is building, bringing benefits to the population and how you're involving the population. And I think the way to involve the population, and what that we've done, is that we organize seminars and all sorts of events, like, for example, promoting a certain competition and supporting them at regional level on developing particular tools that can be used by the population, or as I said, that for example, we can support the development of regional associations of IT users, IT companies, IT sectors, and get them to be together. Like, for example, we did an inventory of all the IT operators in the region and all the IT promoting associations and NGOs that are working, and then bring them together. So what I'm trying to say is that there are various ways of looking at that, but one of the key things is that we should not be having an economic perspective only, because some of the things are not really economic. Like I said, how do you ensure that you are doing a good surveillance and control of the activities in your EEZs? This, you will not be able to really get the people on board, but the people impacted. Mauritius, the country where I stay, for the last 2 years, 6 vessels got stuck in the coral reefs just a few kilometers from the coastline. And one of them, you may be hearing that, it is Wakashu. Now, we have to see to it, and this is one of the strategies and actions that we are undertaking. How do we get the countries? And the problem is that normally the responsibility for the surveillance of the EEZs, etc., is under the responsibility of either Prime Minister or the President. So it's very high level. These are the regalian responsibility of a state linked to sovereignty. And it's very difficult to dialogue with them and get them to change the way they're looking at these things and tell them that, you're not doing it well because, all the drugs are coming through and you're not using the best technologies to be able to track them. And how do you track them? How do you track all the vessels in the region? For example, in the Western Indian Ocean region, we have 5,000 tanker trips of oil, a total amount of 600 million tons of oil passing just close by. Just imagine the risk that makes. So we have to look at it from the perspective of, at the end of the day, what is the end objective? And the perspective should not be just economic. It should be the overall, as you said very well, Chair, is social, the environmental, and also economic as well, but in an integrated manner for the benefit of the people. But at the same time, things like how do you control your EZ? You cannot claim it, whether it is economic, social, or whatever. It's, it's highly, I don't know whether it is political or what it is, but it's highly, and that the way we should be using, for example, and that's, I think, where the regional role is, at least for our region, is, for example, how do we establish a mechanism with the use of new technology to track the movement of all the vessels who are fishing. So, for example, establish VMS, national VMS, regional VMS, and then look at, what they are doing. And I can tell you, even in here, we are establishing these things, and trying to get all the key stakeholders is not easy. I'm sorry I was a bit long, but I thought it's very important to do that. But the last point I'm making, is that I do agree. And in fact, we've already agreed on a regional framework for the cable security, because this is becoming a major issue now. The cable security, because the cable security is an infrastructure which links many countries. And you can, plug in things to look at what's happening from everywhere, anywhere. And that is in nature a regional infrastructure. So one country cannot say, I'm controlling that. It can be coming from somewhere else. let me stop here. I will be very happy to take other questions.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much for elaborating and giving us, some additional information regarding your thoughts on the other presentations as well. Yeah, I would like to also raise that question with Mr. Giocamelli with respect to, involvement of the private sector and the population at large in terms of coming up with your strategies.
Yes, thank you for the question. I mean, I think my general observation here is that, like we were saying at the beginning, I think COVID possibly has helped very much in improving the way we do things and making it easier to involve more people, to involve them more deeply, and to through that making regionalism something deeper in the Pacific than it was before. As you were seeing from the first graph that I was showing in my presentation, I mean, we are small and we are far from the market, but we are also very far from each other, much farther, and we are also very far internally. Each country is an archipelago of, many of our member countries are archipelagos of different islands, up to 100 islands, and 70% of our population is still rural. So, to be honest, if we were to develop the same strategy before COVID, the process of consultation would have been much more limited at national and regional level, and eventually we would have held probably a physical regional validation workshop made up of a few lucky representatives who would have been flown from their island state at high cost and would have validated the strategy, which then would have been endorsed by ministers. Thanks to COVID, we were forced to go virtual, and the ICT, in the same way as it's helping, like my predecessor was referring to in the area of, monitoring the fishing. It has also helped in the way that we can involve people who were not normally involved before. The consultation undertaken for our regional strategy were based on focus groups, all undertaken virtually, different focus groups, including donors, including private sector representative, including non-government organizations. And this focus group, when then consultation with it, when in addition to the focus group, we did online surveys. And these tools were available before, simply we weren't used them, as intensively as we were forced to do because of COVID. And eventually, this consultation touched upon, generated inputs from about 200 participants, 200 people for the strategy, substantial input. And eventually the strategy was shared, the draft strategy was shared and then validated through a regional workshop, which was conducted over 3 days, all virtually, and which was basically open to everyone who was consulted before, whether it either had responded or not. We created these breakout rooms so that each group, each person could have joined the discussion on the chapter with regard to the area of expertise that he was able to contribute to. And during this, and thanks to this workshop, this workshop so led to a validation of the policy of the strategy by around 240 people. If we had done this before COVID, probably would have been 20 in a room validating these documents and sending it to ministers. That's the reality. And to me, if as we learn doing virtual thing better, I don't think that the virtual experience is at detriment of the depth of discussion. It's just a matter of learning how to use the tool better. But the reality is, should now that COVID is over, come back to the way we were doing things before? I would say no. I would say we should continue to pursue the way that we are doing, because for regions such as dispersed, and where transport is so costly, there is no other way to give a real meaning to the words of consultation and regionalism. So my personal opinion is that the experience was very good. The involvement was very good, thanks to the ICT use as fostered by the COVID pandemic.
Yes, thank you. Yes, certainly we're moving to a more hybrid, events now where you can have both in person and online, using the technology to participate as we're doing here now. And also, I think it is important to have your public buy-in as well as get their feedback, because at the end of the day, you're developing policies and strategies that will have to be, I guess, also used and taken on board by our citizens and our public. So it's important to get their buy-in as well. But I heard and Mr. Mohabeer had made a point about small island states and having so many different sovereign states that and it dawned on me that certainly you will have challenges in coming to consensus and to harmonizing policies across a wide cross-section of sovereign states. So how, in your jurisdiction, did you deal with, coming across and ensuring that, there was consensus when you have so many diverse and perhaps, people at different stages in development in their e-commerce environment? How was it possible to come up with a strategy for your e-commerce?
Well, I suppose that like any strategy that requires compromise, not everybody was in agreement with the initial recommendation. We went through a consultation process and we tried to find a common denominator, which we eventually submitted to our ministers. And that was in general what we did in terms of the strategy itself, which is not a legal document. If you talk about instead, and so it provides high level, recommendation that then when you go into implementation, they may face some problems in terms of harmonization. Now, in terms of legislation, because you were referring to this harmonization of rules, there are some recommendations in the strategy which concern legislation. And our recommendation there, and as a regional agency, what we are promoting is obviously not identical pieces of legislation, but we are promoting the development of model legislation that can be tailored to the specificity of each country. In the specific case, we are very much relying on a partnership with UNCTRAL. UNCTRAL has developed top-class model legislation on many aspects of e-commerce, and we are promoting UNCTRAL to go to the different members and to promote the development of e-commerce transaction laws, which are based on the same, indeed, model legislation and convention on e-commerce. So that's, if you like, what we see as a practical implementation of the concept of regionalism in our region with regard to certain pieces of legislation. We have also in place, of course, transaction laws are not the only one that are relevant to e-commerce, as our partners from CTU were referring to. There are many other pieces of legislation. We are relying on a partnership with UNCTAD, which is the depository of some type of model legislation in certain areas, competition, for example. And through that partnership with UNCTAD and UNCTRAL, we are trying, to promote model legislation in the various different areas of e-commerce. We are at a very good stage to do so, because in many areas we don't have actually any legislation in the Pacific. If I can just, share for a second this table. You can see the main type of e-commerce related legislation that we have, you see? And on data protection and privacy, none of our countries, 0%, have legislation in place. On e-transaction, just 21% of our members. Cybercrime, 43%. And consumer protection, which is a traditional type of legislation and just needs to be updated, is 57%. So we feel that, through an approach that is based on model legislation in a setting where not many of our countries don't have legislation as yet. So that can be the way forward.
Thank you. And maybe I could bring in SG Taylor here into the conversation now to give us some idea as well too as to the progress of the single ICT space and some of the challenges as well that have been facing its implementation.
Well, some of the speakers touched on this. Anytime you're dealing with sovereign member states and trying to create harmonization, especially in areas like legislation will always be national. They're passed by national parliaments, and therefore the extent to which there's the political will to implement and agree and stick to those decisions in terms of how that single space is implemented through same legislation or similar or as close as possible. As you move from one country to the next, then that will support the successful implementation. We saw the political will in terms of the elimination of roaming charges. That would not have been done without political support, without negotiation at the highest level with the operators, and therefore it is a clear demonstration of what can happen when there's the political will to cooperate and work together as a region. I just wanted quickly to touch upon the issue of consultation. Of course, this forum itself, I spoke about the CARICOM single ICT space, but we also have a Caribbean Internet Governance Policy Framework. That is as a result over many years of consultation across the board. These IGFs are open to the public. We encourage widespread participation across all the different areas on security, on data protection, infrastructure development, all of that. So we encourage, and that is why it will always be open, it will always be free. We will always use any means we can to promote so that we have the non-traditional stakeholders involved and they can come and share their perspective. Because if we're developing policy that impacts people, we want to hear from them so that those concerns can be factored into the policy. Thank you.
Good. So we'll move on to another question, and we have a question from Mr. Tracy Hackshaw. And his question is, what type of synergies do the regional orgs see between their bespoke digital strategies, and what learnings and best practices do you think each of the SIDS region can share with each other? And he says perhaps this IGF can be the beginning of a mutual digital cooperation between the SIDS region. And maybe I'll open it up to Mr. Mohabeer to provide some perspective and thoughts on this question here by Tracy.
Yeah, I think that there are a few things. First of all, I had already mentioned what I believe really that an observatory, establishing an observatory will be key, because that will enable us to understand how we are doing with compared to each of the SIDS in one region and in the different region, and also with other developing countries. So I think that will help to understand. That's one. And then if we can do it and then publish it, that would mean that will incite many comments, many discussions. That will push and provide a sort of how can I say, a thrust for policy making for countries to improve. Or it will also indicate where we would need to reinforce, ourselves in particular areas. So I believe the observatory as one theme, as an inter-regional tool may be of help. That's one. I said already, secondly, about, and maybe we can include it in the observatory, about the ability of the SIDS to be able to access, adequate funds to achieve what they want to achieve in the development objectives related to ICT. So that's second. I think that we can, based on that, we can have some, best practices and worst practices, things that we should not be doing and things that we could do. Then we can put it on the table and then exchange on these. So I would suggest these 4 areas, which could be the opportunities for us. And maybe I would suggest from here, we take it as a takeaway, but maybe our friends from the PIF and from the Caribbean, maybe they agree, then we should establish a sort of a working, working modality. Like, let's agree to have one focal person in the PIF, in the CARICOM, the IOC. This is key. That concrete next step is the key. Do we do that? I will be happy from the IOC to be the focal person and then discuss with you. And then, of course, we would need to agree on whatever we propose, and then identify the key means with which we can do that. So 4 themes, and then right away, right now, agree that let's agree who will be the focal person. If not, we will end up, and then we'll forget each other, and then we will get lost. So these are my proposals.
Good. I'd like to bring in SG Taylor on this conversation, since you raised the Caribbean aspect of it as well.
Sure, and let me thank Tracy Hackshaw for the question, and I have to call him out because he has been instrumental in promoting SIDS within the IG space for a very long time, and this is, he's been working with the Dynamic Coalition within the global IGF, which has been doing great work in consolidating views within small island states. So thank you for the question, Tracy, and thank you for your work. And you're not on this panel for various reasons, but I'm sure that you have a perspective to share as well. Minister Ishmael from Barbados this morning spoke about a conference in Barbados in 1994, focusing on small island developing states. Coming out of that, a Barbados plan of action, and then subsequent meetings in Mauritius, etc., that brought these small island states together. And even the ITU itself had a specific plan of action in terms of strengthening the ICT infrastructure within small island developing states. I think we have to leverage even this forum and the relationship going forward to make our voices heard within the International Telecoms Union. I would like to see more resolutions tabled in the name of small island developing states. Same for the Internet Cooperation for Assigned Names and Numbers. They in fact have started a survey on how they can improve participation of SIDS within the ICANN policy development process. Within the regional registries and so on, we want to see that. So I think we should leverage our numbers. Of course, is the upcoming ITU plenipotentiary. I think we should never miss an opportunity like that to come together as SIDS on the ground where we are, and to ensure that we're supporting common positions in our common interests. Over to you, Gary. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, SG. In the interest of time, we'll move on to another question. We have a question here from Mr. Nigel Casimir, and it's a question to all the panelists. What do you see as the biggest challenges to adoption and growth of e-commerce and digital economies in your region? And he pointed out things like access to infrastructure, or is it digital skills, or drawing a business case, developing a business case, and to drive entrepreneurship. So I'll ask Mr. Giocamelli to start off on his response to this question from Nigel.
Thanks, and thanks, Nigel, for the question. I mean, I'm a little bit hesitant to spot one challenge, because the approach that we use for e-commerce, digital trade, is indeed an approach that recognizes, 7 policy areas that needs to be dealt with, and within each area you have obviously constraints that prevent e-commerce to flourish. If I were to say but so, you know, identifying the top one, well, it's, you know, even if you address the top one and you don't, in one area and you don't address the other in the other 6, probably you won't get the enabling environment you need. So I would say a holistic approach is recommended in this area of e-commerce as indeed pursued by the Pacific methodology, which is itself, you know, reproducing the methodology of the United Nations Conference of Trade and Development. If you want my personal opinion on the Pacific, things that we notice is obviously we have done progress on ICT itself. So we have underwater cables that connect most of our islands, but unfortunately, most of the time the good connection arrives just at capital city. As I was saying, since we have 70% of the population which is still in rural area, then the last mile connectivity, or the next step of the next mile of the connectivity, is important if we want everybody to partake in the benefit of digital trade. So I think in the ICT area, that's the topic now, the main topic. Not that we have a great connection even you know, to the capital city, but still, you know, if you look at the most important gap, probably now is last mile connectivity in that area. Obviously, the skills. With good internet connection and without the skills to engage in digital trade, you end up just browsing Facebook and being a consumer of internet. And by the same token, if you have a good skill and very bad internet connection, you can still be able to set up a business. We have examples in the Pacific of very successful businesses leveraging e-commerce and being able to sell across the world from countries that have the worst connectivity. And that's simply because the business owner has a good idea, has a good understanding of how the e-commerce environment, business environment works, and is able to leverage all the tools that are available, from marketing for e-commerce to the logistical options to make sure that you know, your goods are in the right location to be shipped to potential consumers. So fulfillment centers is able to set up to face the issue of payments that we face in the Pacific by setting up bank accounts in different countries so that he has access to payment gateways and what you have. So the skills, obviously, if you don't have those skills and you just have a good connectivity in the country, that wouldn't allow you to do good digital trade. Then, of course, the regulation, we were talking about it, you need confidence for our consumers and for consumers overseas, that if they will trade with us, they will be protected, the data won't be stolen, they won't be subject to fraud and what you have. And so, obviously, the move from physical to digital transaction raise all these new questions that just can be dealt with through appropriate regulation. There are many other issues, but I would say definitely, probably, you know, if you look at the basics, really, last mile infrastructure and skills are probably the top area where we should focus our attention. But not to say that there are no important constraints in the other areas. You know, e-payments is still a big problem in the Pacific, especially because you know, we have most of the people that are unbanked. Mobile payments for e-commerce platform through mobile money, it's difficult. There are cases in the Pacific where we are, for example, supporting local e-commerce platform to upgrade in order to accept also mobile money. These are kind of we have good results in some countries, and you know, so challenges are everywhere. But probably last mile connectivity and skills, yes, without those, you won't give access to the majority of the population. You wouldn't be able to set up a business.
Good, thank you very much. I thought I had time for one more question, but prefer to give the panelists a minute each to sort of wrap up, and give some closing remarks. So I'll start with Mr. Mohabeer for you, just some closing comments and some closing remarks, please.
First of all, I'd like to really thank, CTU to have given us the opportunity to participate in this meeting. I would like to just summarize a few points that I made, and I would like to, underscore the need for cooperation across the regions, which is the basis for this event, and in which I believe really that we have to take up on. But I'd like to focus on one particular point, the proposal that I made about the observatory. You see, if, for example, we want to go in international fora, talk as one voice for all the SIDS, on the basis of what? And this is what I'm saying, but an observatory is key, because the observatory will help us to understand, get the same sort of understanding on what are the issues. And then that will enable us to know, yeah, these are the areas which really we need to get ourselves together. That's key. So for me, I think it's very important for us to look at and strategize on the best way the SIDS can go in the international fora. I've been following the conferences of the SIDS, and especially, the Samoa Pathway, the Mauritius Strategy, etc. Since Barbados, I've been looking at that very closely. And what do we see? On many of the issues that we bring in the international front, we have the tendency to be maybe a bit generic. And at the end of the day, our proposals as SIDS, don't even go far. Fortunately, we have the UN agreeing that every decade to hold a conference for the SIDS. And I think we have to see to it how we can collaborate, all the three regions, how we can collaborate to provide the inputs in order to give the substance that is needed for us to be speaking as one voice. Let me stop here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again.
Thank you. I'll now ask Mr. Giocamelli to make some closing remarks.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, first of all, for the opportunity to present update on our initiative. I think this forum is a good starting point for cooperation between SIDS, and we have had other regional initiatives in different areas. We are running a regional initiative, for example, on quality infrastructure, so standards and conformance in the Pacific. And we are really much enjoying mentoring and cooperation with CrossQ, which is the Caribbean agency for quality. So we really value practical example of regional cooperation, and probably I could close my remarks by supporting that idea. Let's start practically. Let's identify contact point in the three sub-regions, and let's move on practical examples, on practical way of cooperating whenever we can, because obviously in the Pacific, we are very much aware of the value of the cooperation. We have benefited from it very much in different areas, and we are very keen to continue this process, because our similarities, despite the differences, our similarities are so many that we are sure that through better cooperation, we can sort of leapfrog in some areas, identify, learn by past mistake or past successes of other, and do not repeat the mistake and go straight to successful solution, including in the area of digital trade, e-commerce, and internet governance. So from our side, the idea of starting with contact point in the area of digital trade is a good one, and we are supportive of it. With that, I thank you again, and I wish you a good continuation of this event.
Thank you. And last but not least, certainly S.G. Taylor for 1 minute comments.
Sure, and I'll be very brief. Very, very interesting discussion. I agree with you, Raj, in terms of the observatory, so that when we go, we know what we are saying. While SIDS itself is not a geographic region, it is not a homogeneous group. I mean, within SIDS, you have economies that are based on oil and gas, on fisheries, on tourism, all kinds of different things. You mentioned protection of the exclusive economic zone. That's clearly a challenge for all of us. I know the ITU has some initiatives around smart seas and so on. So I agree. We need to come together and agree on what are the issues that we can advance together and support each other on. So it's just to find a mechanism for doing that. And I'm here, and let's follow on from this conversation to deliver some meaningful mechanisms for collaboration. Thank you.
Good. Thanks all to all our panelists. I thank you all for this very interesting and informative session. And I think we're close to lunch, so I'll pass you back to DJ Anna for closing remarks and taking us to lunch.
Yes, thanks so much, Mr. Kalu and Mr. Taylor, and of course, Mr. Mohabeer and Mr. Giocamelli for giving us that wonderful, insightful segment. Guys, it's time for us. It's for lunch, actually, and we're going to have some exciting activities lined up for you. We're going to play some games again. We want to know, how much do you know about the Caribbean and small island developing states? Head on over to the engagement page where you'll find all the contests available for this week. These contests will be available for just a few minutes each day to test your knowledge. How much do you know about SIDS? And how well do you think you know the Caribbean region? Complete the quiz correctly within the 5-minute time frame to win a $100 Amazon gift card. After you've played, just join us right here at 2:30 p.m. as we proceed with the opening ceremony of the first ever SIDS Internet Governance Forum. I'm DJ Anna, and this is the Caribbean Internet Governance Forum. We'll be right back after lunch.